If we can get more big businesses and small businesses creating valuable commerce together, that is an enormous boost for the entire economy. It's a boost for our communities, it's a boost for our states, and it's a boost for our entire federal economy.
Business Behind Your Business podcast, where we have the conversations to help your business grow and thrive. And look, we like to bring those conversations with you where we get hold of experts in the various areas that you want to know about and get them to share their experience, their tips, some case studies and some ideas to help you run a great business. And today we are working on this whole idea of how a small business can get itself ready to do business with big business, which is a topic that's been coming up regularly and even more so over the past couple of years with all the changes we've been going through. So welcome back. I'm Paul Swenny, your host, and it's great to be with you again. And today, as I said, we're going to be talking about getting a small business ready to do business with big business. And this is something that came up in a recent conversation we had with Bruce Gleason when we were talking about, I guess more generally, we were talking about Ponzi schemes, but the whole idea was that a lot of businesses are not in a position because they don't go through the process and understand who they are actually dealing with and what steps they need to take to do it properly. And there's a lot of financial and emotional impact, and not all of that is good for small business owners. And we want to avoid that. We're looking at this situation, and the statistic is that less than 15% of small companies or small business are actually ready to be able to do business with big business. And that's an alarming statistic, because I know that for a lot of small business, that one big contract, that one big supplier is going to be the thing that really makes a difference for them and gives them the impetus to grow their business. But we're going to find out from our guest today about why that is a problem and how we can improve that statistic. So I'm going to welcome Bronwyn Reid to the microphone. And Bronwyn is described as the small business, big business interpreter. And we're going to learn about why Bronwyn is the interpreter, helping us to understand the differences in small and big business. One's been guiding relationships between big companies and small businesses for more than 20 years. She's a best-selling author, and we're going to talk about one of those books particularly today. She's an international speaker, mentor, consultant. She's won numerous business awards, which is great. But when working with companies such as BHP, Rio Tinto, Glencore, and international organisations, and of course government. And she's also been working on those transactions, I think, from both sides of the fence, so from big business and small business. So she understands the issues that you are going through or that you need to be aware of. Welcome, Bronwyn, to the Business Behind Your Business podcast.
Hello, Paul, and it's a great privilege to be here, actually, to hopefully I'll be able to give a few tips and tricks and bits of wisdom to your listeners.
Absolutely. Look, I was quite excited when I came across your profile and the work that you have been doing with small business, because it is such a big problem. You know, small business, that big contract or that big supplier, big customer makes a big difference. So we want to make sure that we equip our business owners to get the best results they can. Now, we mentioned that you're a best-selling author, and one of the books that you have authored is recently been updated for 2023, and you've updated that to take into account a lot of the changes that have happened, and we're going to talk about those changes. But why is it so hard for small business to do business with big business?
It's as though the two parties are talking a different language. One over here is speaking French and the other one's over here speaking Swahili. And is it any wonder that they can't do business together? They just don't understand each other. However, when I first set out to write Small Company, Big Business, which was way back in 2014, it took me 3 years to get it done. When I started interviewing people and looking at the research to date, I love going down research rabbit holes, I found that both sides of the commercial transaction were actually looking at the same problems, but they were just looking at them from a different point of view. So that's where the book came from, is trying to solve the equation so that both can understand where the other one's coming from. And hopefully over the last few years, I've been able to have some degree of success at that.
Yeah, that's great. So both sides are looking at the same problem. So Can you summarise what is the core problem that we are needing to look at?
The core problem is, the first one is the small businesses saying, oh, it's all too complex. You have all these, requirements and things that we have to do. And the big business is saying, well, they just don't understand. They don't understand us. They don't understand the risk that we face. And that's why we have all these requirements. The second problem is that big businesses say, well, you just haven't got good enough systems. We can't rely on you to be supplying on time, every time, to the right quality. But the small business is saying, but all those systems and everything, that costs a mint in time and money to put into place. So again, you've got the same problem, both looking at it from a different point of view. And the last problem is that the big business is saying, well, we can't find you. We don't know where you are. But the small business is saying, well, we don't know about the opportunities. We can't find any opportunities. So you've got these three disconnects down the middle. And that is the crux of the problem.
Wow. Okay. So it really is, I guess, in three parts, not just one issue, three separate issues. And I think really if we break that down and start focusing on one issue at a time, that's going to be a lot easier to manage.
Sure. Let's have a look at the first issue. Big businesses say that small businesses are a risk. They just don't understand. And this is one of the reasons why I updated the book post-COVID, that big businesses would see small businesses as a risk. So what they did was they went and built these massive, complicated, long overseas supply chains. So the supply chains were big business to big business, just a big business in another country or another region. Then COVID came along and we found out where the real risk was. The real risk was with those very long, complicated supply chains. And we've seen it before. There's been examples before where these big, long, complicated supply chains have just simply failed. So the small business narrative of, well, we're not that risky, is now coming to the fore. So maybe that problem may be getting a little bit closer. We can only hope. The second problem is what I call the systems problem. And it is a problem because in my book, systems, good, documented, robust systems are the heart of any business. And there's a lot of resistance to, often in small businesses, to put the effort in to actually do that correctly. On the other hand, the big businesses can go about it so badly that they finish up with this monster that is almost impossible to navigate. It changes every week, and sometimes the big company themselves don't even know what their requirements are. So how on earth could the small company possibly keep up? And the last problem, of course, is the visibility problem. That one, I looked up the statistics for the new book when I was writing the book. Still, apparently, 50 to 60% of small businesses don't have a website.
Wow.
How can a big company find you if you don't have a website or a good, credible digital presence? That's still a big problem to be solved.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. So maybe we go back to this, the supply chain issue. I think a lot of people have said, well, hang on, it's too expensive to create product in Australia, and that's why the big companies go overseas. What's your thought on that?
Yes, it is expensive to create some product in Australia. But for the first time since the Second World War, Australia has experienced food insecurity and some product insecurity. Whoever would have thought that we would be short of medicines in this advanced first world country? I'm not the one making the decisions, but in there is an equation that we're going to have to weigh up. And I know that the federal government is doing quite a lot of work on critical infrastructure, critical supply chains. So there is the gem of a change, of a thinking that maybe cost is not the only thing we need to be looking at.
Mm-hmm.
The prospect of food insecurity was a really scary thing for Australians. We saw what happened in the supermarket aisles. People literally fighting in supermarket aisles in Australia, for heaven's sake. Maybe
Yeah,
cost isn't all we have to think about.
not. Yeah, that's right. I remember like somebody saying that they were about to head on a plane coming back from the Northern Territory to Sydney, and they got a phone call from their wife saying, "There's no toilet paper in the shops. Can you get some where you are and bring it home from another state?" And look, yeah, we laugh at it now, but really,
Yeah, I
it was
know.
some pretty serious situations.
Yeah.
But certainly, yeah, that risk of not supplying or not creating product in Australia is certainly more important than cost. And then, of course, we can talk about the employment and creating a stronger economy, local economy. But yeah, certainly costs should not be the only issue.
And there is a little diversion there from what you just said, Paul, that if we can get more big businesses and small businesses creating valuable commerce together, that is an enormous boost for the entire economy. It's a boost for our communities, it's a boost for our states, and it's a boost for our entire federal economy. So there's a lot of big picture stuff there as well.
Yeah. So probably beyond the scope of our conversation today, how we're going to fix that.
But I just thought I'd throw in that little diversion there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so certainly a big picture thing, and I know that has been raised more to a visibility level with our politicians and organisations driving those changes. So that's good to hear, and hopefully we won't have to wait a long time before we start seeing some positive changes there.
Yeah, but some of these things do take a while, Paul, but I'm confident we'll get there.
Yeah. Well, that's my argument. Where small business has an advantage because small business is a lot more nimble than the larger organisations and larger governments.
Absolutely.
So we can actually implement change at a faster rate, or pivot their policies and processes, which then goes into our next thing about, well, if we don't have systems and processes, why don't we? And how hard should it be for a small business to put those systems and processes in?
You're speaking to a bit of an evangelist here, Paul. So I firmly believe that it is not difficult. And the reason that most projects like that fail is because they start at the end and not at the beginning. Somebody comes up with a really good idea that we're going to write down all our procedures, we're going to document all our processes. So they get out a computer and start typing, or a piece of paper and start writing, and then after a couple of weeks, it all just flags. And that's because they haven't started at the correct point. They've got to start with looking at their view from a helicopter view, looking at the company from the helicopter view, looking at the sections of the business. How do those sections of the business fit together? I use a 7-step process, and we don't even pick up a pen until step 6. So it's really not that hard. But then, as I said, on the other hand, the big businesses have gone completely overboard. A lot have just gone completely overboard. I was at a workshop once, and there was a lady, and she was working with a very large company. And her medium-sized company had 14 contracts with that big company. Now, their processes were so clunky that she had to go through a proper contractor onboarding for every single one of those 14 contracts. So the amount of time that was wasted is just phenomenal. And that takes me to another, it's not a sidestep at all. It's very important. A lot of this stuff, the reason that big businesses and small businesses don't talk and they don't get on together and they don't do commerce together, the big businesses blame the small businesses. Or, well, you just don't understand us. Your systems aren't good enough. You just need to get better. And we have federal government initiatives to upskill supply chains. And the entire presumption is that it's a small business's problem. It's their fault. But it's not. It's actually the big business's fault. They're the ones that are making the ridiculous systems. The requirement for $10 million worth of public liability insurance or professional indemnity insurance for the small company that supplies to coffee cups, that sort of thing. That's nuts. It's just nuts. So it's not. You can keep upskilling small businesses, which of course is what I've been trying to do for many years, and have worked with some big companies to do that, to upskill their suppliers. But all that counts for naught if you've still got the ridiculous stuff at the other end.
Are we seeing a change there with big business? Because I have this conversation regularly with people about how complicated we make our processes, or even just the steps involved. Because we seem to say we take a 4-step process and we turn it into a 40-step process because we have to have different people involved in the process and it has to go through different departments. But the question is, well, if we break it down to the core of that process, what needs to happen? And why do we need all these extra steps? Now, I will confess, I have had some audit background, and I know that auditors like to see the trails, but we can create those trails without creating complexity in our processes. And the more people that we need involved in the process, of course, we're going to have delays because people won't be available. And oh, look, I'm going to add another one in here, that a frustration that small business owners have reported to me is they've been dealing with one person and that person changes, and then nobody else in the company they're dealing with knows anything about their contract or where their payment is.
Correct. I have a chapter on that in the book.
Only one. I'm a bit surprised. You must be very good at narrowing down, because to me, there's quite Absolutely. A few issues there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, and this is another thing that is sheeted home to small business. Oh, we can't rely on you. Our staff turnover is so much less than those of the big companies that we deal with. You get a new one, and then you got to re-educate them, and then you just re-educate them, and then you get another new one. And in some cases where, a small company has had a contract for a long time or been with the same company for a long time, it actually becomes where the small company is the only one that it's the repository of the corporate knowledge, because they've turned over 20 people in the meantime.
Yeah. So is big business changing as a result of what's happened in the past couple of years?
Business is changed, and it is as part of what's happened in the last couple of years. Need to go back a bit further, though. The new buzzwords in business are corporate social responsibility and ESG, or environmental and social governance. And then there's the old social license to operate. Now, that stuff's been hanging around in academia and in the fringe press, things like The Guardian and those sort of places, for nearly 20 years, a long time. Now, post-COVID, when a lot of people reevaluated their life, they reevaluated their work, it's now become mainstream. We can even read about it in The Australian now. So all of a sudden, a lot of companies, big companies, have woken up to the fact that their customers are looking at them, their employees are looking at them, and their financiers are looking at them. Now, I could quote statistics on what amount of venture capital money around the world is looking for a socially responsible home, but it's a lot. So a lot of big companies are now realizing that this is another thing that they have to deal with. So while they are coming at it from, we better do some of this ESG stuff or we'll be punished, the effect on us is the same as a small business. We get the benefit. I would like to think that they were coming at it, all of them were coming at it from an altruistic point of view. That is definitely not the case, but heck, we'll take the win.
So the conclusion there is that really it is becoming, no, I won't say easier for small business, but some of the obstacles are being removed?
Yeah. Yes, it is. It's probably more a thought process just at the moment. But if you went back 5 years, if you could wind your LinkedIn back 3 to 5 years and typed in ESG consultant, you would probably get a couple of responses. Do it now.
Yeah.
There are thousands of social responsibility consultants, ESG consultants, even the big four consultancy firms, the EY and those, they have all now got ESG divisions, etc., etc. So changes like that can be a long time in the development. As I said, this has probably been about 10 to 20 years now. So it's probably another decade before it becomes normal, if you like. But the trend is there. It is definitely happening. And the supply chain issue plus the ESG issue, to me, means it's the best opportunities for SMEs in Australia than we have probably ever seen.
And that's encouraging. That's encouraging. So I think then that pushes the baton back to the small business owner to make that happen.
Yep.
And look, I know in your book you've got a lot of guidance about how the small business owner can prepare for that. And look, I'm going to encourage all our listeners to go out and buy the book.
Thank you.
Because I think there's a lot of value in there. And I think if you look at it, if you understand the process and you equip yourself properly, you're going to make the process less stressful on yourself. And also, I'm going to say that going through that process, you're going to come up with improvements in how you operate your business.
Absolutely. Your business will be better for it. Even if you never win that contract, your business will be better for it.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And then if you improve the way that you operate your business, you improve your systems and processes, then you're going to increase your likelihood of successfully winning business from big business. That's going to be beneficial in the long run.
Absolutely. The book's actually been called a textbook. I wouldn't call it a thrilling read, but it's it's based on my actual experience. I found a couple of months ago, we were cleaning out an old storage cupboard, and I found our very first tender that we wrote for BHP. Cringe, absolute cringe. I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, the people reading it must have laughed themselves silly. So everything that's in the book is everything that I've learned. It's actually the book that I needed 25 years ago, but I didn't have. So I had to make all the mistakes and waste all the money and the time to finish up writing the book.
Yeah.
So I talk about what to look out for in contracts, simple stuff like that. What kind of systems do you need? Who to keep in touch with at the company you're trying to pursue? What they think about you? What they're expecting from you? Practical stuff.
So lots of good practical guidance, which is not just going to help with securing more business for your small business from a big business, but also going to help you improve the way you operate and improve the way you think about your business activities and who you actually choose to do business with.
Correct.
Because I think we tend to think that big business is auditioning small business through this tender process, but it should also be a two-way tender, two-way audition.
Absolutely. And I do include quite a lot of information on that. That it's not all roses and hearts when you get a big company as a contract. There's some significant downsides that can be had, as you alluded to before, if you're not prepared. And maybe I think at the very first, I can't remember which chapter it is, but I actually say, do you really want to do this? And I set out a whole list of things that's going to happen to you. And then I suggest that they get a glass of wine or a coffee or something. Sit down and read this list. If you get to the end and you still want to do it, okay, go on, read the rest of the book. Otherwise, put it down and walk away.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, it's good to have that objective approach to it where you can sit back and say, well, hang on, do we need to do this should we be proceeding? Is this the right thing for us to be doing? It might not be the right thing now. Maybe it's something to put on in the future, on your future plans, but it's certainly worth considering. So the 2023 version, updated for COVID and all the changes we've had recently, is now available through booksellers and online, and available through your website, bronwynreid.com.au.
Correct. Available at all good bookstores, Amazon, Apple Books, all those.
Yeah, great. So there's no excuse. It's available pretty much anywhere that you can purchase it. So go ahead and do that. And while you're actually on Bronwyn's website, have a look at some of the programs and training and at some of the other resources she's got available, which can help you just improve the way you structure your business and your processes, and also how you think about who you do business with. There's some great resources there. I encourage you to spend some time having a look and download some of those resources. I'd just like to say thank you, Bronwyn, for coming on to the Business Behind Your Business podcast. It's been great. You've really shared some insights, because I work with small business all the time, but what you shared today has sort of opened up the eyes a bit about there are a few more issues here at play that we need to fix with our small business owners, and it is possible to do business with the big business and to do it well. And you've shown that today. So really appreciate your time and coming on. And hopefully the launch of the second version of the book will be a huge success. I'm hoping that we see a strengthening of small business in Australia, and that big business is not afraid to reach out to small business and tap into some of the great resources we have available.
Absolutely. It's been an undeniable pleasure being able to have the privilege to speak to your listeners, Paul. As I said earlier, and I'm making a big call, I know, but it is such an exciting time for small businesses. But
absolutely,
it doesn't come without a little bit of work.
Well, I think that's the case. We need to do the work. We need to put in the effort, and when we do that, the results will be there. They may not be exactly what we envision in our dreams, but we've got a greater success chance if we put in the work. And again, go to bronwynreid.com.au. We'll put the links in the show notes, and they'll be available on the website for you to track down. And we'll also put a link to where you can purchase Bronwyn's book. Thank you for joining us, Bronwyn. It's been an absolute pleasure. And maybe we might need to get you back to talk about how you do business with government, because that's a completely different kettle of fish.
It is.
It is. We might save that for another day.
We'll save that for another day.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bronwyn, again on behalf of our listeners, and wish you all the success.
Thank you, Paul, and I hope to see some of your listeners downloading some of those resources from the website.
Great. Fantastic.